Okay. There was a legal decision, a judge's ruling that came down recently that I was not happy with. But in order to understand what that judge said, I need to take you back a little while to a story I may have covered, but it may have been like a year or two since I've talked about it. So you all know what you're looking at here. That's Tim Walz of Minnesota. And a couple of years ago, 2023, in May of 2023, the legislature there passed their $72 billion 2-year budget. And people were very excited about the things that were in it. So that's all well and good. But there was one provision in this budget that caused some controversy, and it involved something called the Post-Secondary Enrollment Options Act. So Post-Secondary Enrollment Options, PSEO. And basically, since 1985 in Minnesota, they have had this thing called the PSEO program, and it lets high school students take college classes that they can get credit for at state colleges and universities. So you might take it because you want to earn college credit. You might take it because you just want to get a sense of what a college class's rigor is like. Now, most of you who don't live in Minnesota, maybe you're like me, you took advanced placement classes or international baccalaureate classes. Those are all really similar to what they're doing in Minnesota too. And Minnesota, I think, has those options as well. But this is a state-specific program, like the advanced placement program, that is privately run. This is a state-run program, and it was actually really cool because the students who take part in the PSEO programs, their tuition is covered, they get their books paid for, and they get their classroom fees paid for by the state. And the way this works is if a college in the state of Minnesota wants to offer a class to these high school students, and these students sign up to take the class, whether it's on campus or virtually, the state will reimburse the college for the money they would otherwise make from it. So it's a really amazing program that, you know, it's for high achieving high school students, and good on them. If they earn a good grade, they can get college credit for it. I read some articles where one kid who attended Minnesota State University said he saved $20,000 because he graduated with 80 PSEO credits. And when you factor it in scholarship money, his college degree cost him very little money. That's how amazing this program can be. In fact, let me show you one other thing here. This is from a finance report from the state of Minnesota. But look at this. Program participation for fiscal year 2022, almost 8,000 public school students, 1,500 non-public students, and 1,780 homeschool students attended classes at a college, taking a total of over 180,000 credits. This is all PSEO programs. And the state payments directly to the schools doing it amounted to over $41 million. So this is a popular program that saves high school students a lot of money if they're going to college in the state of Minnesota. That is a fantastic program altogether. So very cool. So what did they do in the 2-year budget that's causing people to flip the hell out? When Tim Walz signed that budget, this is the thing people were talking about, because in a section about the PSEOs, they said this at the very bottom. This is what they added. An eligible institution, a college, must not require a faith statement from a high schooler seeking to enroll in one of their courses, or they can't base any part of the admission decision on a student's race, creed, ethnicity, disability, gender, sexual orientation, religious beliefs, or affiliations. So in short, the new budget said two things. Even if you're a Christian college that is offering these classes, and you're like, let's pretend you're Liberty University, but in Minnesota, and you're offering Beginners Chinese 1, which is a real class one of these schools offered. If you're offering that class, and if you attend Liberty University, you got to sign a statement saying, I believe in Jesus. I believe that marriage is only between a man and a woman. and the Christian school makes you sign something like that. What this budget amendment said is if you're part of this PSEO program, even if you're a Christian school, you cannot make high school kids sign a faith statement that you might have your college students sign. And also, if they are gay, if they are bi, if they are trans, you can't say no to them, even if you're allowed to do that if they were applying to your college. So if you want to get taxpayer dollars for participating in this program, you got to follow the non-discrimination laws of the state, and you can't force these kids to sign off on your faith statement. You can do that at your college, but you can't make the high school students do it if you're offering this program. Basically, if you're playing our game, you got to play by our rules. And that's it. But the bigger issue, the bigger thing here is if you're a private school in Minnesota, if you're a private Christian school in Minnesota, you can still participate in this program. You can say, we're offering this class, that class. Students can enroll at our Christian school to take these. They could take a math class at our Christian school. And the state's saying, yeah, that's fine. We will reimburse you for the amount it's going to cost. That sounds like a win-win for everybody. And the state was now saying, okay, but we're putting a couple easy limitations. Don't force your religion on those kids, and don't discriminate against kids you don't otherwise want on your campus. That's it. And this is not an attack on religious institutions. It's basically a way for the state to make sure taxpayer dollars are not being used to impose religion on kids, and it's not being used to discriminate against kids when the state says discrimination is not allowed, right? By the way, the courses that are offered in the PSEO programs, they cannot be sectarian in nature. So a Christian school cannot offer a class in apologetics, but even the religious schools, they offer English 101. They offer math classes. They offer foreign language classes, and they can still be part of the program and get taxpayer money for that. Okay. So when they passed this budget, immediately after they did that, 2 Christian colleges sued the state. And according to Beckett, which is one of these right-wing groups, today, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz signed a bill into law that amends the law. I just said that. Okay. He signed a bill into law that amends the law governing PSEO to exclude religious schools like Northwestern, not the one in Evanston, Illinois, but there is a Northwestern St. Paul College in Minnesota. So it excludes religious schools like Northwestern and Crown from participating because they require a statement of faith from those students who choose to attend their on-campus programs. The statements simply ask students to affirm the school's religious beliefs for the purpose of upholding their Christian communities. Minnesota's sudden change to the law hurts students who want to attend schools that uphold their religious values. If you let these pathetic high school heathens step foot on our campus, they're going to sully the entire campus environment when they are taking Spanish 2. It's the dumbest argument. But they wanted to sue because they're conservative Christian schools and they're backed by a right-wing group that, of course, wants to sue the state of Minnesota for whatever they can. By the way, let me show you their statements of faith. This is from Crown College. If you scroll down here, this is their website, Our Theology. You got to scroll all the way down. And what does it say here? In their faith statement, living out Christian character also requires us to say no to our sinful nature. And that means they put away sexually immoral behavior. For example, all sexual relations outside the bounds of marriage between a man and a woman. So that's the issue with their statement of faith. They're basically saying if you support marriage equality and you're okay with 2 men or 2 women getting married, you're violating our school's rules, and we should have the right to force you to accept our beliefs if you're a high school taking Algebra 1 or something like that. What about the other school, Northwestern St. Paul? This is what they say in their statement of faith. Let me show you this one. We define marriage as being a covenant between one man and one woman. I guess they can be related because they don't say that's not okay. I don't know how it works. Anyway, as followers of Christ, we turn from sexual immorality in its many forms, including but not limited to pornography, premarital sexual relations, adultery, and same-sex romantic intimacy and or sexual relations. If two men hold hands, you are violating our rules. Anyway, let us train you so that you can vote for Donald Trump in the future, because that's a guy who epitomizes our moral beliefs. But okay, those are the faith statements of the school. And again, if they are admitting you into their college as a college student, they have every right to make you sign off on their bullshit and say, you pledge to believe exactly as we do, because the one thing they do not allow at conservative Christian schools is the diversity of thought. Okay, so they sued the state, and basically the right-wing legal group Beckett, they basically said the law is on our side because the Supreme Court has consistently and recently affirmed that if, and I'm paraphrasing here, if you make a benefit open to the public, you can't exclude us for being religious. The PSEO program offers reimbursements to all the colleges in the state if they participate in this program. Well, you can't kick us out just because we happen to be religious. And of course, by the way, in the lawsuit, they even said members of the committee, the Senate Committee on Education Policy, members of the committee stated clearly their intent to exclude religious schools from receiving public dollars. But I know that's bullshit. And the reason I know that's bullshit is because religious schools were still allowed to participate in the program. Like, no one pushed them out. In fact, I don't have it in front of me right here, but I think there were 18 religious colleges in the state of Minnesota that participate in the PSEO program. Only 2 of them require a statement of faith, and it's the 2 that are suing over it. The other religious schools are like, yeah, we're good with your rules because we want the money and we think we could provide a good education to these high school students, so we want in. So is the state excluding religious schools? No. They're just saying, hey, this is a state-run program, so there are some anti-discrimination rules we want you to follow. And these 2 Christian colleges are like, no, we want to be bigots. It's what we stand for. And they did have a lot to lose if they didn't want to participate in the program. By one metric, I think since 2017, the Northwestern St. Paul School, they had received over $33 million through this program, while Crown College got nearly $6 million. So if they said no to participating in this program, or the state could kick them out because they didn't want to go along with the rules, they stood to lose a lot of money. I want to show you one other thing, which is when this lawsuit was filed in May of 2023, Minnesota has a secular government caucus, which is kind of amazing. And they responded to this lawsuit right here. This is what they said. The state is not restricting these schools from practicing their religious beliefs in any manner. It is merely prohibiting them from using state PSEO dollars to exclude high school students based on their race, creed, etc., sexual orientation, or religious beliefs. Most of the religiously affiliated colleges have not excluded students, and they're not involved in this lawsuit. Religious freedom guarantees all people the right to believe and practice any faith or none at all, and institutions participating in this program must abide by that. Kudos to Mike Freiberg, Athena Hollins, Jen McEwen, and John Marty, who are part of that caucus. So that was a great statement. I mean, that's the right way to think about this. And so anyway, that is the story that happened more than 2 years ago when these colleges sued. I will also tell you the Freedom from Religion Foundation filed an amicus brief with the court, basically saying, look, we have nothing to do with this, but we happen to agree with the state of Minnesota. And because this involves stuff we often deal with, we just want to make 2 key points. And they said, Minnesota's law, the provision in the budget, it does not reflect an organized or malicious effort to target religious schools. It's basically saying students should have equal access when pursuing educational opportunities. Like the rules are neutral, they're not anti-religious. And FFRF also said the state had a significant interest in not funding or perpetuating discrimination when it comes to publicly funded programs. So FFRF said, it's not our case, but hey, judge, we are lawyers, and here's what we think about this thing you're about to rule on. And here's why we think the state happens to be right. So I happen to think the Christian schools cannot have it both ways. Either you play by the rules and then you can get the money, or you say our statement of faith means we are not going to play by your rules, so we're not going to take part in the program. But you don't get to have it both ways. Okay, so last Friday, a U.S. district judge finally issued her ruling on it. And this is a U.S. district judge named Nancy Brazel. She is a Donald Trump appointee, and that's never good on paper. I will also say, though, she was recommended by Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar. So, like, I didn't necessarily know which way this ruling was going to go. Democrat nominates her, but then a Democrat recommends her, but then Trump formally nominates her and she gets approved. So what did she say? The short answer is the federal judge said, I'm going to side with the Christian schools. And she said that amendment that said you cannot have a faith statement, or you can't make high school students sign a statement of faith, and you can't discriminate against them if they're LGBTQ, that law is unconstitutional. That's what she said. She said because the faith statement rule is unconstitutional because you're depriving them of their religious characteristics, and because the non-discrimination rule is tied to it, that whole amendment's got to go. And in essence, she argued what the Supreme Court has basically been saying for years now. You don't have to give taxpayer dollars to private schools. But as soon as you do, you cannot say no to religious schools for any reason. And the judge said this amendment did go after religious schools, which is bizarre because, again, there are plenty of religious schools in Minnesota that are still participating in this program because they know they're not excluded from it. So what the hell is the judge talking about? And there was one aspect of this ruling as I was reading it that I'm like, this is weird. And separately, when I heard about this ruling, I reached out to the Freedom from Religion Foundation and I said, hey, do you guys have any statement about what this judge said? And when they responded to me, they said, yeah, here's our statement. And then one of them asked me, hey, did you notice she said this weird thing? And I'm like, oh my God, yes, I did. Let me share with you what she said that was very weird. Because she tried to give an analogy to argue that the state said we're not discriminating against religious schools. And the judge is like, yeah, you are. Let me try to give you an analogy of what I'm talking about. Look at this. An illustration is helpful. Northwestern requires their high school applicants to agree to a declaration of Christian community by which applicants attest to honor Christ, seek Christ-centered community, and stand together against all that the Bible clearly condemns. Right, that is their statement of faith. That's what the state said. You can't make high schoolers sign this. But look at what the judge says. Such an admissions requirement is basically forbidden by the faith statement ban. Now consider a hypothetical secular private college that participates in the PSEO program. If that secular school, the judge is like, here's me being super smart. If that secular school required that all PSEO applicants attest to honor reason, seek reason-centered community, and stand together against all that rationalism clearly condemns, such an admissions requirement would seemingly not be forbidden by the faith statement ban. Let's think about that for a second. She is saying the rule in the budget says you can't have a faith statement that kids sign off on. The Christian school says we just want you to honor Jesus the way we do. And she's saying a secular school would not be punished if they said we just want you to be good critical thinkers. And she's like, those are the same thing, but you're punishing the religious school for saying you got to believe what we believe against all the gays. But the secular private school that says we just want you to think for yourselves, you're not going to punish them, which makes you wonder what the hell does she think happened at Christian schools? Because the religious declaration, by definition, excludes anybody who doesn't belong to their version of Christianity, while the fictional school she made up excludes nobody. Unless you're not, I mean, if you're not interested in reason, what are you doing taking a college class? I don't get it. Like, even in her made up scenario, the secular school doesn't do the thing that the religious schools are doing. I don't get it. She said in a footnote that a devout Christian applicant would be discriminated against at the secular school. But they would not be. Because what high school student is saying, I want to take a college level course, but I don't want to do any reason. I don't want to do any rational thinking. No critical thinking for me. Who does that? Nobody. Like, you're not even good at coming up with an analogy here. I don't understand. Unless you're assuming that belief in God stands in opposition to reason and rationality, which I happen to believe, but I didn't know she wants to admit to that. I don't know. Plenty of Christians would tell you there is no contradiction between their faith and their ability to think rationally and critically. Again, I disagree with that, but plenty of Christians would tell you that. So what the hell are we talking about here? So the question then is, what happens now? For the time being, that means that provision that said schools can't make students sign statements of faith, they can't discriminate, it's gone. It's off the books. It's unconstitutional. That just means those two Christian colleges with statements of faith, they can still participate in the program. And if a student wants to take a class at their school, they can make them sign that statement of faith. That's what happens right now. It's honestly not that big of a deal on paper because they were already doing that. But then the question is the state of Minnesota going to appeal? My guess is they're probably not, because I don't know that this is a hill worth dying on. I guess the question now is, what's more important to Minnesota legislators? Is it to make PSEO money available to as many students and schools as possible, even if that includes a couple of religious schools that are really bigoted when it comes to gay people? Or do they want to limit where students can go? Because there is a legal way to get around this. You just say, if you want to participate in the PSEO program, you got to be a public college or university. The downside of doing that is that you would be shutting out all these private schools, private religious schools that are perfectly fine because you stand on the principle of discrimination is bad. And the problem with doing that is that for some students in some parts of Minnesota who would have to take these classes on campus, the private religious school may be their only option. And so do you really want to cut those kids off from participating in this program by just saying the money's only available if you're a public college or university? I don't think Minnesota has any appetite to do that. And so this feels like, all right, if it just means we got to let these two bigoted schools participate, maybe we just let that happen. I don't know what they're going to choose. I don't think they're going to change the law. I think Minnesota, one of their chambers is now Republican majority anyway, so it's not going to pass even if they wanted to. But I don't think they're going to appeal. For what it's worth, the Freedom from Religion Foundation told me if Minnesota does appeal this, they will once again file an amicus brief asking the court to side with the state. But I don't think it's going to do that. FFRF did issue one statement that said no school should get a license to discriminate on the public dime. And they urged the Minnesota legislature to step in and make sure that only public schools are allowed to participate in the program. I understand why they're saying that. I don't think Minnesota is going to do that. But I mean, the ruling is frustrating, but I do think it tells you it's a moral indictment of those Christian schools, isn't it? Like, it tells you what they're willing to do to secure public funding while enshrining their right to discriminate, because they are hung up on their ability to make sure students agree with them that gay marriage is wrong, same-sex marriage is wrong, that trans people don't exist. And they're hung up on that. They want to have their cake and eat it too. They want taxpayer dollars while doing whatever they can to make life harder for people who are already vulnerable. I don't think that's religious freedom. I think that's taxpayer subsidized prejudice. I think if you're a Christian school that wants to be bigots, you should have to do it on your own dime. You should not get public funding if you want to play the game and get money, even if you are helping other students out. So, anyway, frustrating decision. I don't know what else Minnesota can do about it right now, though. Okay, I'm going to stop there. What other questions we got here? Poor Minnesota. I know. They've been through a lot this week. They had their 2 lawmakers assassinated. I mean, it's been a shitty situation in that state for a while. Thank you for that donation, Riri. I appreciate it. Thank you. Where all the rest of you are also welcome to donate. More and more, I pity these people. Thanks, Dusty Dark Horse. I cannot imagine life constantly hating and fearing other people, feeling victimized. Whenever anyone wants you to treat people well, don't they have real problems? I know no one suffers more in our society than conservative Christians. It is amazing to me that you have a statement of faith you need students to sign. And then, like, at the bare minimum, if you just said, we hope you agree with like Jesus's moral teachings. But no, they get into the weeds. Like, we need you to pledge that you're definitely against gay people getting married. That is one of the rules of our religion that we need you to sign off on. That statement of faith, I don't even know if it says like you got to believe Genesis is a book you should take literally. The world was created in 6 days. No. That one's fine. That one's up for debate. But when it comes to gay people, we have very strict rules about it. And we need high schoolers to sign off on it if you want to take French 2. It sounds dumb, but this is what they care about. Yeah, this analogy hypothetical doesn't stand up. Guess she attended a religious university. You know what? I don't know where she attended, but now I'm curious. You can look it up and get back to me. Can we do another collective eye roll at this point? We can. Get out the sigh as well. All right. Couldn't they look at it as an outreach opportunities, get the heathens to come to you? That is one thing. If you get rid of the faith statement and make it easier for people to take classes at your religious school, you would think that is just good marketing for your school and a way to reach people who might not otherwise consider it. But no, they want to limit the pool to people who agree with them or people who are willing to lie and say they agree with them. They're okay with that too. Lying is fine as long as you do it for Jesus. That's a good message to send the 16-year-olds taking your classes.